Hey guys, welcome to yet another session by Scalar, and in this particular session, we're going to look into Azure Basics. So in this Azure Basics session, we'll be learning how to create an SQL database in Azure. So it's going to be a very short and crisp session where you'll be learning how to do exactly what I've stated, that is how to create a SQL database in Azure. So we'll not be covering a lot of other things, we'll just be concentrating on what we are going to do. So once we start, then we'll be going ahead with the demo. You can follow through with the demo. You can open your Azure account and you can just follow the same steps which I'm doing, and you will be done with it, and you would have a database at the end. Okay. So now, before moving on with that session, please make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our upcoming videos, and also leave a like if you enjoy our content. And if you have any queries, leave a comment down below, and we would love to help you out and address all your issues. Okay, so now without any further delays, let's begin with the session. Okay guys, so now let's start creating SQL database. Okay, so when you open the Azure portal itself, you would see in the very top domain itself, there is this thing called SQL databases. You can just click on it and it'll automatically open. Then we can start creating the database. So select SQL databases and then click on create SQL database. Okay. So first thing, obviously, you'll have to choose the subscription. Subscription is already available, free trial. So I'm going to go with this. If your subscription is pay as you go with that. So whatever subscription it is, you can start using that. And then you can select a resource group which you already have, or create a new resource group according to your requirements. Okay. So this is one thing. And then you'll have to provide a database name. So I'm going to name this particular database as MySQL. What shall we name it? I'm just going to name it Scalar DB1, and then you'll have to select a server. But right now we do not have a server because it's the first time I'm creating a SQL database, right? So for the first time, you'll have to click on create new and then create a server. So I'm just going to name it the same, Scalar DB in .database.windows.net. So it's not available, it's already in use. So we can choose something like Scalar DB123. Yeah, this name is available, so I'm just going to go with this. And then there are multiple authentication methods. Either you can use SQL authentication, which is directly giving in the username and password and logging into. And then there is one more using Azure Active Directory, which I'm not using currently, so I'm not going to go with that. Or you can use both SQL and Azure AD so that it becomes like a MFA, multi-factor authentication. Okay, so I'm not going to go with that. I'm just going to go with SQL authentication. So server admin login, I'm going to provide it as admin. Okay, so admin, administrator, root, login manager, we cannot use this, or a built-in database name. Okay, a built-in database username. So I'm just going to provide my name, Cody, which is my login, and password. Um, okay, they want a password which is at least 8 characters in length. They want uppercase letters, lowercase letters, and some alphanumeric characters. So I'm just going to go with my go-to password. Again, so this cannot contain part of your login name as well. Okay, great. So I'm just going to go with this. Okay, so the password is selected. Now clicking on OK. So now we've created the server. Okay, so server is ready. The database name is provided. So do you want an SQL Elastic Pool? So first of all, what is an SQL Elastic Pool? It'll basically be, let's say, a box, and within that box there can be multiple SQL databases. And then according to the size of the box, let's say if the box expands, the number of SQL instances will also increase. When the box decreases, the number of SQL instances will also decrease. So what exactly that box represents is that the scalability. So if you want, so basically when there is a lot of data coming in and you need more databases, in that case the box will automatically, so the box will expand, which basically means you will scale up and there will be more databases, and then there will be lesser databases if there is no need for SQL databases. Okay, so in this case we don't need an elastic pool. We are creating a singular instance. For one instance we don't need a pool. For more than 2 or more instances we would need it. And then you have to choose what type of an instance you need. Okay, so for that you can click on configure database, and then over here you can see the maximum data size is 250. And so we again, Under free trial, it is completely free. You can still use them, no issues. You can go for a basic one as well. You can go for a general purpose one as well, where you can select even more things. And then there is a standard workload which you can automatically take up for workloads with typical for performance requirements. So basic is basically for practice purposes. So data max size is 2 GB. So you can see the total cost itself is very less, only 359. But when you come to standard, it's like 1000 rupees. But again, it doesn't matter because you have the free trial. If under the free trial, if you're using it, there is no issue with it. You can still increase the size. Okay, cool. So let it be standard. I'm just going to click on apply. Okay, so then you can choose the redundant backup storage. Okay, it could be local, it could be zone, it could be geo. Local means there is no redundant backup. It's stored, the backup will be stored in the same location. Zone means it will be stored in a different availability zone within the same region. Geo means the backup will be stored in another availability zone in another region altogether. Yeah, so this is a much better way of doing it, but it will be much expensive than the other two. So I'm just going to go with locally redundant, as this is just a practice. So these all is provided. Next, go to networking, and then we need a public endpoint, because without a public endpoint we cannot log in into our SQL database from our local PC or from a different server. So we'll not be able to log in. So we need a public endpoint. If you provide a private endpoint, in that case you could log in from an Azure server. So within Azure, if you're trying to connect to the database from an Azure resource or an Azure service, you will be able to connect to it with the private endpoint. No access in the sense you can't access it. Like you can basically connect it with your code, right? You can connect it with your code and try to access it. But for now, we need public endpoint. Allow Azure resources and services to access the server. If you provide yes, so other Azure resources like Azure Virtual Machines, Azure Web Apps, so these resources will be able to access it. So you can provide yes if you want, and then add current client IP address. So this will basically add my IP address. So again, if you want, you can do it. So setting yes to allow communications from all resources within the Azure boundary. Setting add current client IP address to yes will add an entry for your client IP address to the server firewall. That is, whenever somebody is trying to log in, so if I'm trying to log in, my IP address will be added to the firewall, and that will be allowed. So I'll be allowed to access it. Okay, so you can also provide no here, doesn't need this. But again, if you provide yes, other Azure resources can access it. Now coming to connection policy, there are multiple types of connections. Default is directly connecting. So using a client connections originating inside Azure and proxy for all client connections originating outside Azure. So if I'm connecting from an Azure virtual machine within the Azure environment, in that case, it would use a redirect policy. But if I'm trying to connect it from my local PC, it will basically create a proxy for it. And then if you click on proxy, it will automatically create a proxy for all connections which are coming in. It doesn't care if it's from Azure or outside, everything will be proxy. And if you provide redirect, every single thing will be under redirect connection policy. So if you click on this, you would be able to know more about the connection policies, how exactly the redirect policy works, how exactly the proxy policy works. If you want to read more about it, you can just click on learn more and understand everything. If you want to learn more how firewall works, you can click on it and learn more about it. So yeah, so this is mostly it. You don't have to provide anything else in the network security, network part. And then coming to security, Microsoft Defender is not required. Just click it on not now. You can see, right? You can start a 30-day trial period, but after that it will cost you 1,000 rupees per server per month. It's an expensive tool, but it's a pretty effective tool. But again, it's not required for practice. If you're a company who's trying to secure their data and their databases, then you can go for Microsoft Defender. It's really helpful. And yeah, so you don't have to do or enable anything in the security part. Everything, let it be default only. Additional settings, data source, start with a blank database, or it'll automatically add a sample database to it. And or you can basically select a backup which you already have, and it'll upload the data from the backup into the database. I'm just going to go with a sample database so that I could show you that the sample database is available. So when I connect to the database, Adventure Works LT database will be already available. Okay, this is what we are going to do. So next, tags. And here again, this is optional. I'm just going to provide tag SQL DB. Okay, so you can review it once, and Yeah, you can review it once. If everything is proper, then you can just click on create. It'll take few seconds to create the starting deployment, and it'll take a minute or two to create the SQL database. And once it's up and running, then you can connect to the SQL database. So how to connect to it from your local PC? So if you have a Mac or a Linux instance, and you will have to have MySQL client installed. So if it is installed, you can just use your regular commands like MySQL, U, your username, P, your password. You'll have to provide your password here, and then capital P, port number. So it's an SQL, a regular SQL database. If it's MySQL, then you'll have to go with this. Okay, this is a Microsoft SQL database. Okay, so you can provide the port number, and the host name will be provided here. Okay, so that's how you can connect to a MySQL database. And yeah, so let this be creating. I'll also show you one more thing. Azure database for MySQL servers. So the same thing, but you can create a database for a MySQL server. So what we've created is basically an SQL database. Okay, let me just let it create. So in that same thing, let's create a MySQL database as well. So I'm just gonna do the same process. I'm not gonna waste any of your time, and provide a name, scalar, db, MySQL1. Currently, this service is not available for your location. What about East US2? Yeah, it's available over here. Let it be. And I just want the basic one. I'm going to go with the basic one. No. Let the storage be less. Let it be one core. So basically, I don't want anything really powerful. Locally redundant is fine. Yep. Okay. So this is a separate service. This is just for MySQL server. MySQL server. Let me just open this. Let me open portal in another one. Yeah, and then yeah, then you provide the administrator username. So it's my username, and you provide password. Next, all our additional settings. I don't want double encryption. It is fine. So now you can just check it and create the Azure database for MySQL servers. Okay, especially for MySQL servers. Now, sorry. So the deployment is succeeded, right? Let me just dismiss this all and go back. SQL databases, and the database is up and running. You can see, right, the database is up and running. The database has a server name as well. Okay, so this particular database you should connect it to a Windows virtual machine. So in this case, you'll have to connect it to a Windows virtual machine. You cannot connect it to MySQL because this is not a MySQL DB. For example, we can connect it to the query editor. So query, and you'll have to provide the password. Yeah, so it's connected. So now we already have a sample database within this particular database, right? So if I click on tables, tables should be available from the AdventureWorks database. And you can see the AdventureWorks one, it's already available. Okay, and then let's see if there are any views and stored procedures. Yeah, there are certain views, and there are system stored procedures. There is not any particular ones created. Okay, so now let's create a query. Let's select count star from sales lt.address, or instead of address, let's provide something else, customer. Yeah, so there are 847 rows in customer table. So if I just remove the count and run this query again, so you can see it's taking some time to run, right? Yep, and it shows the entire table. It'll show like it's showing 77 rows. Okay, because we'll not be able to scroll the entire thing. But if you open this in basically an SQL server and then connect to this particular database in the SQL server, then you can see everything. This is basically a sample query editor which is provided by Azure, but it's still in preview. It's not completely provided yet, but you can still run certain queries. You can save the query and run it again. Yeah, you can do multiple things using this. And for example, where title equals to Mr. and run this. You can basically select any other query also. You can, let's see this one. Let's show tables. Um, I don't know why it's not running. Select title from, let's see, are there any other, select star from sales.product. And then we'll try to select something specific from this. I think there are a lot of rows. That's why the query is taking a lot of time to run. So it totally depends, because again, it's an online query editor. It'll obviously take some time. If it's a local client, in that case, it'll be a little bit faster than your regular online query editor. You can see this, right? Okay. So now let's see. Yeah. So this just basically shows just the color. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that this is how easy it is to create a database, and you can start querying. For example, you can just start querying using the query editor itself. And if you create a MySQL server, in this case, you can directly connect to the MySQL server from your local terminal. Or if you have MySQL client in your Windows PC, you can connect it to from that as well. And also, you will have a query editor in that. You can also like create and run queries directly from the Azure portal itself. So other than that, there is nothing else new over here. So this is basically one more basic session which I wanted to cover, and I have successfully shown you how to create a database and how to run queries in it. So then it's pretty easy to delete it. Just click on delete, scale delete, and that's it. It'll delete the database. Okay, so you had 250 GB of storage. We allocated space was only MB was only 16 MB. One more thing, there's dynamic allocation. So even though the maximum storage size is 250 GB, you won't pay for 250 GB. You only pay for the storage which is being used. For example, if only 2 GB is being used, you'll only pay for that 2 GB. You wouldn't pay for the 250 GB which you have selected, because it will dynamically allocate the storage according to the data which is incoming. Okay, so this is basically it, guys. Thank you for attending this session. Meet you in another basic session.